Hello and a very warm welcome to Front Page, only on the AIM Network, India's definitive media organization and voice on everything AI and technology. Hello, how are you doing? It's truly a pleasure to have you all with us. But before we get into the headlines and what follows are, of course, the front page stories, here is something which is very joyous for me to share with you, which is the fact that CYPHER, India's biggest AI summit and expo, also AIM's marquee event, is back in its 10th edition, which makes it bigger than ever. It shall take place in October of this year. The venue is KTPO, Bengaluru. And I know that you're very serious about your AI and tech, right? Then, well, pretty much, then I'm very sure that you will be at CYPHER 2026. And now, here are the headlines. India's PLI schemes have drawn over 2.4 lakh crore rupees in investment and created 14.15 lakh jobs, driving exports past 15.2 lakh crore rupees, with mobile phone production up 2.4 times and 99.2% of phones now made domestically. Tamil Nadu's merchandise exports surged to $58.95 billion in 2025-26, up from $43 billion just 2 years ago, making it India's fastest growing exporting state, driven by a 36% jump in electronics exports powered by Foxconn and Pegatron. Bharat Forge has signed a memorandum of understanding with French aerospace company Flying Whales to jointly develop and manufacture heavy lift airships in India. Meta is testing an app called StoryKit, which uses AI to generate personalized bedtime stories. As CynLr Co-founder Gokul joins me exclusively on Front Page, he will explain how their IISc-backed Object Intelligence Platform enables robots to grasp unknown objects in seconds, challenge billion-dollar humanoid rivals, and transform global manufacturing automation. Now, just 6 years ago, India had launched a bet: pay manufacturers to make things here instead of importing them. Now, today, the government has put a number on how much that bet has paid off. You know, honestly, that one number which I feel we can never fathom is the liking, sharing, and subscribing number, which keeps on growing. And if you keep doing it, yes, just like that, it truly motivates us on Front Page. Thank you so much for your kind support. And now, the center had announced that production-linked incentive schemes have resulted in actual investment of over 2.4 lakh crore rupees and employment generation of over 14.15 lakh jobs, direct and indirect, by the way. And here's the number that actually puts the entire scheme in perspective. Cumulative exports under PLI sectors have crossed 15.2 lakh crore rupees since its inception. As of March 2024, that export figure stood at 4 lakh crore rupees. It nearly quadrupled in just 2 years. Now, of course, if we start to look at the sector which is carrying most of the weight and doing most of the heavy lifting, large-scale electronics manufacturing. Yes, mobile phone production, which has increased roughly 2.4 times since, by the way, the scheme launched. Now, mobile phone imports have declined by about 77%. And today, approximately 99.2% of mobile phones used in India are manufactured domestically. That's honestly not an incremental progress. It's a near complete reversal of where India's phone supply chain stood before the PLI scheme. Now, here's a sector that actually gets less attention but has moved just as significantly. The pharmaceuticals PLI scheme has recorded cumulative sales of over 3.64 lakh crore rupees. It has enabled domestic manufacture of 1,931 pharmaceutical products, including 191 bulk drugs manufactured in India for the first time ever. And in bulk drugs specifically, India has established manufacturing capacity of roughly 55,000 metric tons across 26 critical active pharmaceutical ingredients. That's actually reducing import dependence for medicines like paracetamol, levofloxacin, sorry about that, and norfloxacin. Drugs India was previously importing the wrong ingredients for. And of course, now this is increasingly being made from scratch, which is actually quite brilliant because it is being done all domestically. And the scheme's reach extends further. In telecom and networking products, PLI has supported the development of indigenous 4G technology and domestic manufacturing capability for 5G telecom equipment, strengthening India's entire telecom manufacturing ecosystem. Now, the medical devices PLI scheme has facilitated domestic manufacturing as well of advanced medical equipment India previously had to import. And now, of course, here's a number that actually underlines just how fast local manufacturing capacity can scale if everything comes together perfectly. Compressor manufacturing capacity for air conditioners specifically has grown from 1 million units in 2021 to 10 million units in 2025-26, a tenfold increase in under just 5 years. And localization of key components like PCBAs and cross-flow fans has honestly improved substantially, leading to, as you would have guessed it, domestic manufacturing of several critical air conditioner components that were almost, by the way, entirely imported not so long ago. So what's the actual takeaway from all of these numbers which have been stacked together? The government frames this as reflecting India's growing integration with global value chains, not just import substitution, which I think is a huge distinction. Genuine export capability built through direct government incentive. Electronics, pharmaceuticals, telecom, medical devices, and white goods. Now, 5 very different industries, all showing the same underlying pattern. Capacity building domestically, then scaling toward export markets. And now, of course, we are scaling toward the front page take. This, I believe, is India's industrial policy graduating from ambition to evidence, not just a forecast for, let's say, the year 2035 or beyond. This is actual investment, actual jobs, and actual exports, which are already delivered and will continue to deliver. But of course, there is also a question that I have for you in this. Can India's newer schemes, Semicon 2.0, the mobile phone manufacturing scheme, and others replicate PLI's track record? Or does execution risk grow as the ambitions start to get bigger and bigger? Please do let us know what are your thoughts in the comments below. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page by the IIM Network. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. Every state wants the title India's export powerhouse. This year, one southern state actually has earned it. And the numbers explain exactly why. And you know what gives us true joy, apart from the numbers, is the fact that when you like, share, subscribe. Truly motivates us. Thank you so much for your support. Now, Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal confirmed it in Chennai. Tamil Nadu's merchandise exports rose to $58.95 billion in 2025-26. That's actually up from roughly $43 billion just 2 years ago. Now, according to the Ministry of Commerce data, Tamil Nadu has grown 13.7% year on year in fiscal year 26, making it the fastest growing exporting state in the entire country. So then, well, the question begs, what's behind this surge? Well, smartphones and electronics. Tamil Nadu became India's largest exporter of electronic goods this year, with electronic shipments surging 36% year on year to nearly, it's a whopping figure of $20 billion. That single category now makes up 42% of India's entire electronics export basket. One state carrying nearly half the country's electronics exports on its own. And here's where actually that electronics boom is physically concentrated. Kanchipuram district, home to major contract manufacturers like Foxconn and Pegatron. Kanchipuram has emerged as India's second largest merchandise exporting district, recording exports worth $26.4 billion. Now, there's only Jamnagar at $36.6 billion, which ranks higher nationally. But a single Tamil Nadu district is now out exporting entire states elsewhere in India. And here's what makes this growth, which is genuinely notable. This happened despite a year of real trade tensions and geopolitical instability. Global demand stayed subdued through much of fiscal year 26. Yet, Tamil Nadu's export engine kept accelerating anyway, powered specifically by strong United States demand for smartphones and telecom equipment. While several traditional export categories faced headwinds, electronics simply outran the turbulence. Now, here's, of course, the ambition that Tamil Nadu is actually chasing, which is the fact that back when the state launched its export promotion strategy, Chief Minister M.K. Stalin set a target, $100 billion in exports by 2030, up from $26 billion at the time. 6 champion sectors were identified to get there. And let me list them out for you. Textile and apparel, food processing, auto and auto components, leather and footwear, electronics, and machinery. At $58.95 billion today, Tamil Nadu is now roughly 60% of the way to that 2030 target already, with electronics alone doing far more heavy lifting than originally expected. And electronics isn't carrying this alone, by the way. Tamil Nadu remains India's largest textile exporter, backed by Tirupur's tightly integrated garment manufacturing cluster. Now, the state also holds strong positions in leather, marine food, and auto components, categories Goyal himself has repeatedly highlighted, by the way. Now, as core to Tamil Nadu's export identity, alongside its newer electronics dominance. And here, of course, is the front page take. Now, we feel at front page that this is honestly like a state's electronics bet paying off in real trade numbers. It's gone beyond a forecast. Clearly, $58.95 billion, my friends, already booked, already shipped in a genuinely difficult global year. Thanks to Trump. Thank you. Well, but the question I have for all of you is this. Can Tamil Nadu sustain this pace towards its $100 billion target? Or does this year's electronic surge represent a ceiling that's very hard to keep climbing past? Let's not forget, very recently, Ford has also announced their latest GCC. They've also announced their engine capacity, which they're planning to expand through their production of 235,000 engines in Tamil Nadu. Yes. So, well, a lot of things firing for Tamil Nadu. What about you? Are you going to fire your comments? Please do. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page by the IIM Network. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think IIM. India's defense manufacturing sector has added something unusual to the mix. It is their airships. Very nice. And you know what could help? You flying in to like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much. Truly motivates us, and it always helps us to keep going and stay ahead of the curve. Always very kind of you. Now, Bharat Forge has signed a memorandum of understanding with French aerospace company Flying Whales to jointly develop and manufacture heavy lift airships in India. They are said to have a specific focus on defense applications. Now, the machinery at the core of this is the Flying Whales LCA-60T. It is a 200-meter long, helium-filled rigid airship capable of carrying up to 60 tons of cargo. Wow. Can actually load and unload cargo while hovering in place, which means doesn't need runways, ports, or heavy ground infrastructure to operate. But when we think about the high altitude terrain in Ladakh or the Trans-Himalayan connectivity projects, roads and airstrips simply don't exist or take years to build. Yeah, there's a huge issues there. Therefore, this development makes it very useful for reaching remote terrains, which are exactly the kind of locations that matter most for defense logistics along India's borders. Now, Flying Whales had signed an MOU with TCI back in February to explore civilian airship logistics. In April, it partnered with BLP Group to set up a final assembly line in Tamil Nadu, wow, which is the third global industrial hub. And just weeks ago, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman met with Flying Whales president in Paris to discuss building out a full manufacturing ecosystem in India. Now, Bharat Forge's MOU adds a defense-focused manufacturing partner to that growing list. And given Bharat Forge's track record, that's quite a meaningful addition, to be honest. It has a history of partnering with global defense and aerospace firms to localize manufacturing in India, be it, for example, armored vehicles with South Africa's Paramount Group, or air defense systems with Israel Aerospace Industries, or for that matter, unmanned aerial vehicles with Wind Racers. Bharat Forge definitely gets it going every time it collaborates. Now, the company's defense order book now stands at roughly about 114,000 crore rupees, and its aerospace revenue is on track to keep growing this year. But with this airship pact, what it does is that it facilitates that expanding defense and aerospace strategy, and that too directly. And here comes the front page take, directly. What's notable here is actually how quickly airships have gone from a novelty pitch to a genuine multi-partner Indian industrial push. But the real test, although, is execution, because, well, MOUs signal intent for sure, not so much delivery. We've seen that in the past. But if it works, India gets a very reliable logistics option that doesn't really exist anywhere else in its current toolkit. So here's the question, as always. Could heavy lift airships actually become a serious part of India's defense and infrastructure logistics? Or is this a promising technology still years away from proving itself at scale? Please do let us know what are your thoughts in the comments below. This is, ladies and gentlemen, front page by the AIM Network. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. Now, Meta's latest AI experiment is aimed at something very personal. And this development could be very, very beneficial for any child's sleep cycle. Well, I wish it existed when I was growing up. Anyway, what needs to be done right now is the fact that you need to like, share, subscribe. It is like a lullaby to our ears on front page. Yes. Thank you so much for your kind support. Meta is testing an app called StoryKit, which uses AI to generate personalized bedtime stories. Now, parents start by creating a character. The app lets the users snap a photo of their kid's favorite toy or person, for that matter, to bring them to life. Not scary at all. Now, from there, the parent shall describe the setting of the story and pick a life lesson to be woven in. Now, the app then generates a full story with accompanying music. That's nice. There is, of course, no writing involved at all. StoryKit runs on MuseSpark, which is a model from Meta Super Intelligence Labs. Right now, StoryKit is only live in limited markets. It was first spotted in Mexico's App Store, which suggests Meta is treating this as a regional trial run before any wider rollout. Okay. A Meta spokesperson said it's built with AI safety filters, has no social features, and is restricted to users 18 and older. Okay? Although the reception for this hasn't exactly been warm. Wonder why? Tech commentators have pointed out that one of the more intimate rituals of parenting is building a child's imagination and a parent's bond with them. Yes, this development could potentially be stripping that away. Not potentially, I think definitely. Anyway, but here is the front page take. I have to give a very balanced take. Many exhausted parents run out of new stories long before their kids run out of demand for them. Fair. And a tool that generates something fresh and personalized in seconds solves an actual nightly problem. But the skepticism is about which parts of parenting people are comfortable automating. And that's the part of this boiling debate, not the technology itself. So here's the question I have for all of you. Is an AI-generated bedtime story just a convenient tool for busy parents? Or does outsourcing that moment change something about it worth protecting? Well, if you are a parent, please do let us know what are your thoughts in the comments below. This, ladies and gentlemen, is front page by the AIM Network. Even if actually you're not a parent, please do let us know. What do you feel about that? Because honestly, testing it in Mexico and anyway, it's got a question mark there. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM.
AI prototypes are everywhere, but very few professionals know how to deploy AI where businesses actually operate. Introducing the Certified Forward Deployed AI Specialist by Adasi, a certification designed for the new generation of AI professionals who can bridge technology, deployment, operations, and business execution in real-world enterprise environments. Because modern AI success is no longer just building models. It's about making AI work inside production systems, customer workflows, and enterprise operations. The future belongs to engineers who can take AI from demo to deployment. This certification is ideal for AI engineers, solutions architects, technical consultants, Gen AI practitioners, developers who want to move beyond experimentation and deploy AI systems that create measurable business impact. The future of AI belongs to professionals who can take intelligence from concept to real-world execution.
There are a lot of models available on Amazon. You can use any model. For this particular workshop, I'll go with Llama 3. It's the simplest, easiest, and in terms of cost, no problem. But yes, if you are an organization, you want to go and work, you can use Anthropic's Claude model. You can use any of these models. So this is the 2ML file. And what you need, all of you, is you can see there is a Docker file also created. There is a Py project created. There is requirement, and this is the environment. So this is the app where you have a Py cache. So this is your cache. Init.py will not have anything, that is for initialization. This is your actual agent script. And then here you have got a README, which you can use automatically running in Docker, and these things come automatically.
You can click on data store. You can click on the tool name. So this is tool 1. It's a data store. You can give the description. Now I'm going with the lowest score in terms of grounding. So we have low confidence that the response is grounded.
AI prototypes are everywhere, but very few professionals know how to deploy AI where businesses actually operate. Introducing the Certified Forward Deployed AI Specialist by Adasi, a certification designed for the new generation of AI professionals who can bridge technology, deployment, operations, and business execution in real-world enterprise environments. Because modern AI success is no longer just building models. It's about making AI work inside production systems, customer workflows, and enterprise operations. The future belongs to engineers who can take AI from demo to deployment. This certification is ideal for AI engineers, solutions architects, technical consultants, Gen AI practitioners, developers who want to move beyond experimentation and deploy AI systems that create measurable business impact. The future of AI belongs to professionals who can take intelligence from concept to real-world execution.
There are a lot of models available on Amazon. You can use any model. For this particular workshop, I'll go with Llama 3. It's the simplest, easiest, and in terms of cost, no problem. But yes, if you are an organization, you want to go and work, you can use Anthropic's Claude model. You can use any of these models. So this is the 2ML file. And what you need, all of you, is you can see there is a Docker file also created. There is a Pi project created. There is requirement, and this is the environment. So this is the app where you have a Pi cache. So this is your cache. Init.py will not have anything, that is for initialization. This is your actual agent script. And then here you have got a README, which you can use automatically running in Docker, and these things come automatically.
You can click on data store. You can click on the tool name. So this is tool 1. It's a data store. You can give the description. Now I'm going with the lowest score in terms of grounding. So we have low confidence that the response is grounded.
Robots are available. What they cannot do is adapt. a slightly different part, a change in lighting, so to say, a transparent surface, and well, the machine stops. A human baby picks up an unknown object in seconds with no training. Now, Gokul spent 6 years building that into a machine. CynLr's Cyro learns to grasp a completely unknown object in 10 to 15 seconds. Audi is running a pilot. General Motors is testing it across 22,000 parts, or maybe more. The company has raised $15.3 million. Figure AI, well, has raised $1.9 billion. Gokul is founder of CynLr, and I am truly excited to have this conversation with him exclusively on Front Page, where I believe he and I shall unveil to you what lies ahead in the wonderful world of robotics and beyond. Welcome to Front Page. How are you doing, Gokul?
All good. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction.
And it's truly a pleasure to have you with us. The fact that you, I believe, have done something which maybe the industry hasn't caught on, hence you spent those 6 years of your life trying to figure it out, and that's where actually I'd like to start. Now, your research essentially started in about 2019 odd. We are 7 years down the line. And tell us, I'd like to ask you, who is Gokul? What got Gokul excited about this entire world of robotics? What CynLr does? And what is it that robotics in your head you are doing that probably the industry has not been able to wrap their heads around till now?
Right. Oh, that's a broad set of points to cover, but Ali, to begin with my journey, so this problem has had a very long gestated journey along with my career. It started all the way when I was in the college doing my BTech in instrumentation, and I was more fascinated with building a robot that could harvest climbing a tree and coconuts and so on. That being one of the hardest problem because you have all weather conditions,
Correct.
You have a price point that's a problem and so on. So when I was disillusioned with the kind of projects and PhD programs that happens often in universities, rather I want to take that as an opportunity to build a product. I don't have the clarity that I have today, but there was a very notional clarity in terms of what's different between presenting a paper versus something that works in your hands versus something that is working in a user's hand, right? So with both this passion merging together,
Nice.
one of the problems that I was obsessed at that point was why aren't robots capable of solving such complicated tasks
Sure.
in condition where everything kind of changes, right? So all we wanted to do also as a step-by-step procedure is not to start with complete autonomy, but at least a manually guided robot from your base standing at the bottom of the tree that you could just kind of do the operation and things. So you just point out, hey, this is what you want to go and pick, and the robot then figures out how to kind of go and grasp it. This is done by, but actually taken care by the robot. So this is how we wanted to start with.
Right.
But this is around 2007-8, and if you would have noticed at that time, it was only industrial robotic arms that were prevalent.
True.
And each arm used to weigh heavier than a human being, or the same weight that a human being can pick. Second, the vision in itself was highly limited because most of these arms were not dynamic enough. They did not understand the scene, adapt, and so on and so forth. Orchestrating all of this together into a all-weather condition like your car is very, very complicated.
Correct.
And there was industry legacy thinking that was associated with the way the approach towards robotics was also happening. And surprisingly enough, the price point of each of these robots would be somewhere at like 30 lakhs to 40 lakhs.
Correct. That was a big disadvantage. I remember.
Globally, if I think from a global context point of view, 30,000 was not a big showstopper at the time for them to adopt. Even in India, if you see, given the labor price point, if you look at welding and painting, that's almost everywhere is automated in an automotive.
Correct.
They have been the largest proponents of adopting robotic arms. And yet, you ask the question, why is a very simple machine with 6 motors and 3 pipes in between connecting them is expensive as $30,000, right? So a car is close to what, 10,000 plus parts, right? 22,000 actions that you do on top of them. Correct. If you think about sub parts, it will be 50,000-60,000 parts or so, like all fine components down to. And if that would come at in our entry market level, maybe of like 4 lakhs to 5 lakhs back in the time, 2 to 3 lakhs, like Bharat 800 and so on, so forth, all these were available. If that kind of an engineering could be shrunk down to this price point, why aren't the robotic arms getting shrunk? That's because the utility for it is so limited in the way it is being given to the user.
True. Valid point.
The robotic arms, on the other hand, if you think about it, it requires the whole environment to be constrained to a very, very narrow tolerance, right? So, in fact, if you think about it, each arm, industrial arm, would promise you 20 micron of repeatability, at least in their spec sheet.
Correct.
You would be able to see 50 to 60 microns to 100 microns, which is basically 1/5 of your hair's thickness.
I know.
It's a reliability that they are actually, or repeatability that they are actually putting to you.
Also, I'd like to add another thing, Gokul. You mentioned, weld shops and paint shops, but you're talking about OEMs where you would have robotic solutions. Correct. Now, a lot of times, OEMs, to cut costs, let's say, or deal with, unions or labor crisis, they implore their vendors to then go ahead and go in for robotic solutions. And that is where actually the biggest roadblock comes in. So imagine a rubber molding vendor or for the plastic injection molding vendor. For him, it doesn't make sense to have a robotic arm, right? Clear understanding.
That's right.
Here is a component which needs to come out of the mold. You put it down. Just that movement exactly is costing upwardly of 20 lakhs. So you're then wondering that an operator cost is about 15,000 rupees per month. With overtime probably will be 20. How do you justify that?
In fact, if you think about it, I mean, just on that point, right? So globally, if you think about it, it still is a very cheap solution. But the problem is, you want to apply for a task that is more. So 20,000 is only the cost of the component, right?
Correct.
But the solution would cost them anywhere upwards of $150,000 to $200,000.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you have to put engineering hours to make it work. Second, if I talked about the 20 micron of repeatability, your environment must be adjusted to the 20 micron of repeatability. If your object shifts by, that 1.1 mm or 0.2 mm, now it looks very different because the same object in a different orientation, it's a different shape, right?
Yes.
It's different.
Yes.
You don't even have to twist this much. It's just small change. The robotic arms forget what to do or cannot actually understand what to do, right? They cannot reconstruct it. But majority of the applications where you need human hands today require adaptation from one iteration to the next iteration.
Sure.
Because the wires do not come in the same way that you anticipated and then programmed it for.
Agreed.
They would always come in a very different orientation. You will have objects with plastic covers on top of them. Plastic retain its shape, right? It kind of flexible. It moves in a different way. Imagine taking a cap and then putting it into a pen.
Yes.
Right? This very, very complex. Mating parts is very complex than placing parts.
That is true.
In placing, you can talk about tolerance. What do I do for this? This is two material touching each other.
Yeah.
There is no game of tolerance anymore, right? Whereas the industry was obsessed about making the robots more and more precise. Why I've got to 50, can I get it to 8 microns? Can I get it to like 2 microns, right? So that's where the world was going. And then it's assuming your inability to solve these problems were a precision issue, not an adaptiveness issue, right? That portion is where it dawned to notice that without the adaptability put into the arm, which is only one portion of the full task that you actually do, right? One organ of the full task you actually do. In fact, robotic arms, by the way, one more factor that everybody must understand is arms can come without the hand.
Yes.
They come only up to the wrist.
Correct.
You have to custom design your hands every time.
Yes.
If the dimension of the object changes, usually this gripper used to be the negative of the shape of the object.
Yeah.
Right? So if you precision engineer everything, where do you give room for the evolution of the product, dimensional change of the product, right, or the component that you have in front of them, right? So suddenly, someone finds that ergonomically, if I change this by 1 mm of taper, it is better, and then I want to send a next revision of it, right? This revision update would take you anywhere between 6 months to 9 months for you to stabilize on a robotic arm.
Absolutely.
That is the time. By the time you have come for the next version of the product, right? It's kind of unviable for someone to adopt. That's why the volumes are so low. That led to the robotic arms being very, very expensive. It's the lack of volume that, like, if you think about it, I think IFR statistics, $16 billion is the global market for the robotic arms. That's too narrow, right? If you think about just the manual labor wages paid in just a GM or Ford, right? Would cross the numbers of $16 billion.
True.
Annually.
True.
The global market is only $16 billion, right? $48 billion is the total robotic arm solutions, right? So it's such a small market, and out of which only 30% of the cost is robotic arm. Remaining 70% actually goes all the way into structuring the whole environment. That's a lot of night for a customer to go through to get into automation. So you're actually making it a barrier for customer to adopt. While they know the benefits of automation, the robotic arm becomes a barrier to adopt because you have so much of hand-holding engineering that you have to do, which is too rigid, right? And you are trapped into a customization sickness, which means the customer has no defensibility when the version of the product changes, so they get enslaved more and more into the setup that you have than to have the freedom to respond to my consumer taste evolving. If the customer wants a new type of a car, I'm not at a liberty to go and modify it. In fact, that will manifest a lot even in the way structured processes happen today.
Time and cost both, Gokul, to be honest. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you actually came to this entire thought of exploring the entire industry. One, the fact that it's not been explored, it's unnavigated waters till now. And the fact that if you're being able to deliver a customer a solution where, let's say, for example, sectors like automotive have still, I feel, in a big way, adapted wonderfully well as far as robotics is concerned. Semiconductors, since we were talking very shortly a while back regarding mating and the precision aspect of things, the semiconductor sector would be a bloody nightmare, man.
Absolutely. The entire electronics, in fact, I want to distinguish the semiconductor part from the electronics per se. All your gadgets, your mobile phones, your TVs, white goods, your laptops, all of these are extremely complicated because you're dealing with flexible parts, not anymore blind, rigid, metallic parts per se for you to. And you have to do more complex manipulations. You need more finger capabilities. And by the time you could set up an automated process for all of this, within a year, your mobile phone completely kind of changes. So every time you're taking 24 months to 36 months for you to set up an automation cell, just becomes true. So the crux of it lies in the kind of intelligence you need to put into a robot system. To be able to adapt live. While we have a lot of progress that has happened in the AI, I mean, back in the time when I started my career, neural network was at its early stages. We were more SVM and traditional like cross correlation, which is convolutions and all that kind of technology that we were actually adopting. And then neural networks were actually coming in at the time. This is 2011 and so on and so forth. That was getting into popularity. More solutions were coming in. But the issue with the approach with neural networks is it doesn't mirror the way the human brain actually operates.
True.
Either doesn't mirror the neurons as it is, right? Because of which we have confused the inherent intuitiveness that we have, which we use to learn, or we exploit to learn about the real world, versus building that evolutionary aspect of whatever they have created as intuition through data. Right? Today we are building neurons that should assume these fundamental intuitions that the human brain has through a volume of data, rather than starting from the intuitions that the human baby is born with to be able to go and pick. So, like, for example, to learn a language, you've gone through 20 years of training and, we are more vocabulary rich than concept rich in most cases, right? That's what engineering teaches us in many cases. But in most cases, in almost every case, you have never read a self-help book to see better.
Yes.
Right? It just happened instantaneously. You can't remember how the evolution of it happened. You have never read a self-help book to how to handle an object. Instinctively, a baby will go and do it.
True.
Put it in his mouth, throw it out. He doesn't know what to do with it, so it throws it out. Right? Yes. So this is an evolutionary trait the system has, which is what we utilize to course correct the action. Hey, don't grab it like this. Grab the spoon in its handle in a certain way, and so on and so forth. How to wear your shirt. And all that is a corrective action that we do.
Which is essentially, and I'd like to share this with the audience here, Gokul, which is the baby brain which meets the robotics. That is the basic genesis of that, and that's what inspired you. Let's just walk everyone through this. Now, for everyone, CynLr collaborated with the Center for Neuroscience at IISc-Bengaluru to build brain function research directly into the Object Intelligence Platform. And essentially, I would now like to come to that, Gokul. Over to you. But what did IISc's neuroscience research give you that computer vision research, for example, alone could not? And what does the baby brain analogy actually mean in engineering terms? I mean, I was a very curious baby. I'm pretty sure so were you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Burnt a lot of fingers, but yeah, anyway.
Quite well, yes. So, the foundational problem that we have with the current approach of neural networks, or the missing pieces that, like I put it, is the inability to learn live. If I give you a coin, you don't take millions of images and go back, train yourself to learn how to detect each character in the coin.
Correct.
All you do is you keep your algorithm very simple and then tilt so that better information, right? The way the machine learning is built is it has no idea of the source of the information. It just forced to detect them as, the same shape as this also has a pen and this also has a pen, which is just a green, green circle that is actually looking at. How would this be a pen? We don't know, right? There is no intelligence that evolves on. The second point, we are obsessed when it comes to vision. Of course, vision is the biggest augmenting sensor for you to make a robot dynamic, because you have to understand the world, you have to understand the 3D space. So then vision is the primary thing. But except we are confusing imaging with vision. The eyes and the camera would give you imaging.
Very interesting.
But they don't give you vision. Vision is equivalent to, if I say a word, equivalent to, listening versus hearing.
Yeah,
right?
Fair.
If I say a word mango, my mouth starts watering. We are almost at the fag end of the mango season.
Thanks so much, Gokul, for bringing up those memories right now. But yeah, anyway. Ye dil mango more. But anyway.
Dil mango. Yeah. Say this word mango in a language that you do not recognize, right? You would not have put a random pattern of sound that fell in your ears.
Correct.
But somehow you're able to put a meaning to that sound pattern because you're able to recollect the taste. Your mouth starts watering, your nose starts recreating the smell of it, your eye starts remembering what the shape and the color of that was, what did your hand feel. This associated sensing of aspects of the object is what gives you the complete feeling of what an object is. Right, or what that sound meant. So this cross correlation between different sensing is what gives you the vision per se, right? In holistic manner, right? So vision is not independent of your manipulation. Vision is summation of your manipulation with respect to the visual stimuli,
right?
The imaging stimuli that you had. So this is the second part that's actually missing. The third part is we assumed that color is the purpose of vision. Color image is the purpose of vision, right? But I does not see color first. It's motion.
Yes.
And there's 18 different ways of constructing depth of what we know in the way we categorize them. It could be like, depending on who categorizes it, may actually change slightly differently, but of which six are very, very primitive. Starting from your, autofocus. That's the first two of depth, right? Second is, you will never be able to focus without your eyes converging on any of these objects.
True.
Right? You will use motion as the most primary cue for you to construct them. Right? So all these, like this, you have six other primitives, preliminary ways of constructing depth. Because in a given scene, there is no one way of constructing depth that will give you the absolute information. Because you are challenged with various different characteristics of the object. Right? That's of the scene. Now, what is the purpose of having color vision? The assumption is, identify the pen in this room. So now my background is a cacophony of color. It's almost like a noise of color. Right? Yep. You want to get this pen out so that I can go and pick this pen. How do I separate it? Either I can go about knowing every object in the background and then eliminate them, or I can look for the color pattern of this pen and then isolate it. Right?
Fascinating.
Identification became a method of isolating this from the background. Right? But human brain does not go about identifying before it actually goes and picks the pen. It's an illusion that we are drawn into, right? That's how a baby, without knowing whether it's a pen or not, without even knowing that the cap is attached to the pen, it can still grab this, put in his mouth, throw it out, right? We are not color dependent for the information. We want to just eliminate the background for us. Okay, what is in the foreground? So that happens to autofocus first.
Fair enough.
That's true. If you want to find out, if you want to spot to your child that there is a bird in the tree, or you want to see very clearly, unless it flies or it moves, it's very hard for us to see. So every animal that wants to camouflage itself, first thing it does is to go still.
Yes.
Because if you move, you could see that even in a random pattern very well.
True.
So this is the third aspect, right? And the fourth aspect is color is not the absolute information. In fact, that's a very, very subjective information. For you, what is the color of the roof that you actually see there? You would say it's white. But actually, if I take an image, you would see that there is a yellowish tinge, there is a bluish white, there is gray, there is all of that. There is a gray that is as gray as my chair that I am sitting on. But for you, gray, but that is white. As good as the blue, black, and the gold white dress illusion that the internet was split into. That's how dynamic is the color perception for a human being, right?
Correct.
That has the absolute information to train on objects and then to identify objects. So that makes it too expensive to compute. You are
Which is true.
not compute.
Correct.
Right? This is a basic what a camelon's brain or a very basic rat brain can actually do.
Right.
We are struggling to do with billions and billions of power that is being dumped into it. Yes, it's able to do a lot of amazing things that a human being will not be able to do it. In fact, there are places where it's really better than a human being in many cases, right? Because me multiplying 100 numbers together would take maybe aeons.
Okay.
But for a computer, a billion points, a GPU will compute within arithmetically it will compute within a fraction of seconds.
Correct.
Right? That is a different advantage. Arithmetically, we are disadvantaged, but logically, we are superior, right? That confusion that we have, we are trying to employ an arithmetic machine into a logical application, right? So that we are inheriting a very different machine per se, right? So all these gaps are getting into, at scale, you will emerge an intelligence whatsoever it is. Any system at scale shows a very, very powerful intelligence in them, right? What is emerging as a behavior right now within the ML space, the way we do it? It has to into the simplification that the brain has gone through over billions of years of evolution, an amount of complexity that is able to deal with as a general purpose machine. And if you don't have a general purpose, if you want to get into the AGI largely, then you want to understand and then say, map, what is another machine which is able to do that? Right? And then with the information disadvantage it has, right? We are information blessed. In fact, most of the ML systems are information blessed. It's an individual human being, we are not.
Because yes, the moment you're starting to establish a new system, as you just mentioned, you're actually, at a loss because you just have to sift through so much of information, as you and I have just been discussing, Gokul, and as you have been, highlighting. There is just billions and billions and billions of parameters for you to kind of, constantly keep honing and bringing it to a standpoint where it, in a way, sense to have, for the lack of a better term, a sense of consciousness, maybe.
That's right. Science cannot operate without empirically defined words.
Yes.
Right? If science cannot operate with empirically defined words, it's harder to do engineering on and above that, right? You can have notional. Consciousness is still a notional understanding of it, right? That way, I can understand that even chair has certain level of behavior. The system rests.
Fair point. Hence, behavior. Yes.
So basically, that's the characteristics or the way you put it as behavior of a system.
Yes.
Right? And if you don't, if I'm not able to solve an object, it's not the problem of a humanoid form factor or an amount of, the volume of data being insufficient.
Correct.
Right? Parameterization that you want to do into, right? That is over bucketing and over classification. That's what you're doing with parameterization. True. In fact, you want to simplify it. You want to bring them down into a, manifestation, combination permutation manifestation of a very basic set of parameters about an object. That's how the brain consolidates down, brings it down. That's the easy way to get into a generalizability through thinking rather than memorization. Right?
Correct.
Today we are going into a heavy memorization, over classification of too many things. Right? The brain does not have billions and trillions of parameterization for all the work. It instructs them from a very, very simplistic set of, figure or like points for you. Right?
Yeah, the correlation aspect of the brain, generally speaking. Yeah. Which you were able to achieve, Gokul. Let's be honest. I mean, you've done wonderfully well. So congratulations.
I would say we have stepped into it. There is a long journey to go.
I'm aware. But I mean, why am I saying this is, and I'll corroborate that by saying that, as far as the CLX vision system is concerned, if I were to talk about that, it handles transparent glass. You have highly reflective metals. So completely unknown objects, which were, to be honest, the biggest, most mammoth hurdles as far as robotics was concerned just a few years back. So, I mean, you've been able to crack that. So that's a good step forward. As you said, you just stepped into it. There's a long way to go, but that's a great way to start the journey. Now, what did CynLr build at the foundational level that makes this possible? That's one. And honestly, what is that one thing that you still feel is the most frustrating part, which you're still failing at, and it's a work in progress, and you're probably trying to find a way around it?
Right. I think answering the first part, we looked at what are all the sensing that is needed for the system. While the world focused so much on the actuation, I mean, when we started, both Nikhil and I, we are two partners in the company, two founders. Both of us had our career all through and through together. And from when I started the career at National Instruments earlier, and then when we started doing a journey together, in every aspect, whenever some task was not completed, we always blamed the manipulation inability. And we started focusing more on adding more and more joins and actuations into the machine as possible. We enrich them with more degrees of freedom and more motion capabilities and so on and so forth. While motion is the indicator of the intelligence, it is never the cause of intelligence. The cause of intelligence is always with the sensing. And we underestimated the sensing because we do not understand them very thoroughly, right? So we focus on what are all the sensing layers that we would actually need. Then there comes a question in our thought analysis, in our thought experiment in our head, to say what we need to prioritize. Battery is a combination of so many sensing. From your touch is a very combination of so many other factors of sensing, your of sensing in your hands, and triangulations with your hands, your orientation understanding, then your depth and so and and the visual sensing and so on. So the thing that I asked is who will be less capacitated to manipulate an object, a blind person, a person who is blindfolded and goes blind, versus the
right.
The person with leprosy is much more well guided to manipulate the world around them.
Yes.
Right? Hold and all that, but and softness, hardness to a great extent they can still understand it, but not the blind person to a great extent. Right? I mean, everybody through an iterative process can do whatever that they can actually do, but the journey that it takes longer for you, the complexity that it actually. Then also that got corroborated in your technical aspect, right? So when you think about from a neuroscience point of view, the largest volume of data comes from vision.
Yes.
Why you close your eyes, each eye is close to around 115 million pixels to around 26 million pixels on an average, right? Now that's a massive volume of data. You have like 30 to 40 GB of data every second going into your brain. When you down your eyes when you want to listen to music, when you want to feel a rose, or when you want to taste an ice cream, the first thing that you do is when you want to enjoy the other senses is to shut down your eyes because you want to release the neural activity. So then if that is the largest volume of information given, then that's the first biggest blocker. So you want to solve that piece first. So we started with vision as the first piece, right? So that was a long-standing journey. So though robotics is where I began my interest with, vision became my primary target for me to kind of solve through the last 16 years per se, right? Then comes the augmentation now, where we have built whatever the vision could do in a sufficient manner, but to further evolve, it needs the support of the rest of the other senses,
Yes.
including hand, skin, and so the biggest bottleneck that I have today is generating the technology that is available today, which are not meant for this purpose of development. So we have to build, like I have the problem of building a car with cycle wheels, right? Because the cycle wheel is what they imagine, the cycle is what they imagine as the solution today. And so that's the big challenge that I inherit today, including the tools, including the machine learning processes. Uploading my own team internally is a huge barrier in most of these cases. While we know what we may have to do, our progress and the rate of progress is constrained by the kind of talent that we inherit and the narrative within which we have to operate. And the narrative drives the goals of individuals, talents, team.
Okay. Fair point.
So
I mean,
the narratives are not aligned to the way we want to drive the process.
fair enough.
Our expectations and everything, because we need customers' reflection. And customer expectation is also more tuned to what is most popular, because that means it's closer, lower hanging fruit, because that's what the popularity always drives.
Also, the fact probably the customer, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Gokul, the customer's expectation also comes from a certain point of repeatability. One. Second, they don't want their existing production modules to get affected. They don't want to go into experimentation. And I completely see your point that at the end of the day, you're going ahead and trying to run at probably 100 kilometers an hour right now, but you don't really have probably the calorie intake which will allow you to achieve
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. We don't have the fuel to do that. Yes.
Okay.
And there is an ecosystem problem in all of this, because one single organization cannot fix this all. It's an industry play. And quickly we realized that we stepped into not building a company, but building an industry.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of burden for any organization with an incapacitated fuel to do that, which is again money in many cases, right? So, and with this, money alone cannot solve it, but money is a necessary first step for you to start doing you don't have the capital that the rest of the world is enriched with, right? I mean, whether we agree with the valuation or not, but the kind of volume of capital that has flown into them starts training the industry to support them, right? Start being relevant to them, than to be relevant to your thesis and
Fair point.
We are grappling with multitude of absent ecosystem. From the financial ecosystem being absent, their metrics being not favorable to this kind of approach. While finally the space tech is seeing what it's due in India, robotics industry is yet to see any such dawn. And we compete for the same capital which a mature industry, a new player in a mature industry would be able to better mobilize the capital into a revenue. Whereas just capital is a big problem.
Tell me this, generally speaking, the mindset is, I'm going to come back to you with the ecosystem bit, but generally speaking, the mindset is that if you have a wonderful example which comes to life, you mentioned space tech, Skyroot. Skyroot has done something wonderful. I'm very proud of it. I'm pretty sure so are you and everyone, including Nikhil and your entire team. Now, maybe, hopefully, with God's grace, there will be a lot of capital which will start to flow as far as, given the achievement. So, do you agree with me that for something like that to happen as far as the robotics ecosystem is concerned, something earth-shattering or groundbreaking needs to take place for everyone to kind of come into focus their attention?
Absolutely. In fact, there is a perspective change. I think of all the rest of the ecosystem, surprisingly enough, government is the first mover here.
Yes.
They are doing a lot of things that I have come to realize now, which is actively move towards robotics and having the robotics ecosystem. But the financial market is yet to kind of respond back to it. The industry is the lagger. Usually the industry is the leader, right? But even in space, for sure, is government have been the leader in many cases, right? Without the ISRO, without the kind of backing, and rightfully so, the private financial market has also responded to it very well. But I don't think it has responded to the scale it has responded to the US organizations. And I think space brings an amazement to people, right?
For sure.
Right? It's more closer to the solutions. And it's meant always being there. 60 years, we're destroyed with a customer proof point every time. Seeking thought and understanding. So robotics is always perceived as a solution problem. But actually, it's a technology problem. The foundation in it. And even now, the physical AI is a response to the GPT layers maturing to a great extent. Seeing the extension, the methods of it to be architecture to be implementable or extending that into a physical world, right? That's how they are actually, which is essentially being an application of a GPT.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
That's a problem. That's a problem because that's not the right mechanism to observe for. We didn't build the GPT that is meant to be for the physical AI. We are trying to take the GPT as it is to be applied for the modify it for the physical AI.
Understood.
It's kind of an unexplored problem versus an unsolved problem. An unexplored problem always fascinates human mind.
Yes.
New continent opening up.
Correct.
Right? It's a frontier. The new frontier that you're exploring. That's what space opens up as an opportunity.
Sure.
Right? Whereas robotics have remained to be an unsolved problem. Right? Ethics perspective that's observed is kind of is very impatient. Right? While on the customer side, they want solutions very quickly. The investors want customer, validation before you could even into it. It needs both the dedication of time, supply chain, and money. So that it's like the US market has that doesn't happen. There's also a valuation nightmare that's going on. That's on the other hand, which is bad for the robotics industry if the bubble starts bursting. But there has to be somewhere a midway has to be met.
No, I agree, and I'll back it up with numbers. To be honest, what you're just talking about, because it's very relevant to our conversation right now. Figure AI, Gokul, $1.9 billion raised. We were talking about the lack of funding, etc. $39 billion is the valuation. Then we have the federal whistleblower lawsuit, which took place in November of 2025. I'm sure you're aware of that. Former head of product safety. Alleged safety protocols were gutted. The month Series C closed. So then that's the other side of the funding bit. And that's the question I have for you, which is the most funded humanoid company in the world has a safety lawsuit, sir. You have $15 million as far as the funding which has been raised. And you're going ahead and talking about a conversation which is fascinating till now, what you're talking about, right? So I want you to please shed your thoughts and weigh in on this and make the case probably that the industry's capital allocation, do you feel, is fundamentally wrong then, Gokul?
I think to somewhere it's a lot of vanity money.
Thank you for your honesty, sir.
I don't think, while I have criticism over how less we are funded, because I want to compare with China, not with US. We have not done as good a job in fostering the local ecosystem within the country. I'm not talking about the supply chain. There is a new thing that's happening, new fad that is happening, manifesting as deep tech.
Yes.
You need to look at IP. IP in terms of methods to make is very different from IP in terms of foundational.
Sure.
It's not like 5G that you're actually inventing or 6G that you're inventing or going to, that's frontier shifting tech.
Correct.
That's foundational technology building, right? Localizing water manufacturing is an investment into manufacturing, right? CNC things that we have to build locally and fabrication, metallurgical processes, which is very much needed. And that has to be invested into, but that should not be clubbed under deep tech. Deep tech should be seen away from that.
Wonderful.
Right?
Fair point.
If someone is actually, even within the motor, if someone is actually doing a frontier shifting method of doing the motors, right? Not building the motors per se, right? Not localizing magnets per se. That has to be seen from a different lens. We should continue to invest into it. We should exponentially invest into it. We need to outcompete in terms of our investment into it. But that should not be mended together into deep tech, because even within our system where some of the investments will masquerade, basically rightly allocated. There are other schemes for it. Rightly allocated fund for the deep tech will be wrongly routed into those schemes. While that is there, while we have to do as equally as what China has invested into, I do not think the valuation and the way it is actually going prematurely. It's a FOMO cycle that has kicked in, and it's not right at the kind of volume of money that is being dumped into. And the volume of money that is dumped into, what worries me more is into the compute power and the training side of it, the ecosystem building.
That's
and if that
another
$1 billion goes into, if that $1 billion goes into this foundational tech that needs to be built for each component that goes into a robotic ecosystem or humanoid. See, humanoid is just a form factor. Tomorrow they realize humanoid is not sufficient, but I have the platform for me to kind of reshape into whatever the format that I want to make into. Can evolve. That's thing. But am I investing into those factors, or am I investing into the AI thing and so on? Right?
Fair point.
Where the gap that I see, the bubble may actually burst, because somewhere fundamentals are actually missing.
Fair point. Fair clarification. I'll come to the entire Sam Altman and Jensen Huang mindset and understanding for sure. I'll come there. But before that, since you and I have kind of spoken about this, and it is important as far as the ecosystem is concerned. So Gokul, the two gentlemen who've been on the show on Front Page, who've spoken with me, two wonderfully brilliant people. I'll cite the examples. I'll start with human labs, right? We had a conversation on Front Page. Mr. Manish Agrawal, former Nazara Technologies founder, you're aware of that entire situation. Now, he has committed $20 million personally as far as capital to human labs is concerned. The human intelligence data layer for physical AI, we've covered this, like I mentioned. So, first example is this. Now, if him being a part of the entire ecosystem, does that help? Or is it that CynLr has already probably sorted that issue out as far as the data layer is concerned internally? That is part one. The second bit, I want to mention another wonderful gentleman who came in and had a conversation. I'm sure you know him, Krishna Rangasai. He talked about as far as, SEMA.ai is concerned. Now, he spoke about how physical AI requires purpose-built edge silicon under 10 watts because cloud-connected AI cannot work in latency-sensitive real-world environments. Fair enough. Now, does Cyro run inference on edge silicon or cloud? And what happens on a factory floor with intermittent connectivity? Now, these two examples I thought I'll cite for you because they are, in some way or the other, are they robust ecosystem players for you, which you and I were discussing? Does it help or does it not?
Yeah. So, SEMA.ai, very, very true and very, very aligned with that thought process. And it is needed to see. Let me add a perspective to it rather than
please.
The way we look at it is not from the angle of today, how algorithms are applied is we try to circumvent the limitations of the hardware that we inherited through algorithms. Right? So what do we do, and then how do we come up with it, and so on. So rather, we looked at what does the physics and the algorithm that is needed to solve the physics of the object, and then just adapt the hardware to whatever that is needed for it. You do that, you have a lot of inefficiency that is being cut out.
Sure.
Right? That's how we talked about simplification of the data layers. Honestly, I do not know about the first layer about there. I would perceive that to be the data layer side, right?
That is what it was. Basically, yes.
From a data layer side, if it's humans, there is a split between human-centric data, right? So there are a lot of the collection that's going on, and then when I'm looking at right now, you have no idea whether I'm looking at the camera or the screen behind it or the object behind it.
Fair point.
You don't know what did I take my decision for. When I went and picked that object, what was the gaze? What exactly was I actually looking at? We do not the right information. I was we wrongly associate color information for the details of the object. So the nature of data matters more than the volume of data, and then what you're collecting about it will change drastically. Secondly, neither is a robotic arm equipped, or the robot system is equipped with the same faculty that the human being is blessed with. If I do not put the finger right, my decision process will.
Sure.
My decision process is very different, right? If I have something else that is stuck with my hand, my decision to act on it will be very different. I respond and correspond to the limitations that I carry, or the kind of movements that I actually carry.
Yeah.
And sometimes it becomes very hard for me to solve. I start figuring out and then tinkering and not being able to solve, stuck permanently. You look for help for someone to come in and intervene and then recover you from the situation and so on. So the robotic arm or a robot system has an entirely different kind of faculty of motion and the sensing. So data relevant from that point of view to this system. Like if I change my spectacle, it takes a couple of days for me to get adjusted.
Yes.
If a person is changed with out of the type of different blindness that happens, but also blindness that can be corrected if I have a borrowed eye, it takes more than a year for them to kind of get adapted to the vision. You start from scratch again. We are underestimating all this processes when you're just trying to make irrelevant data to be connected to the relevant data.
Very valid point.
Yes.
Very valid point.
Yes. You have what you have built is a hyper labeling machine that starts going around labeling everything that you actually see out of the internet connotations.
Sure.
Labeling is very different from me saying this is the mouse is very different from how I need to grasp if it is like this or if it is like this or if it is like this. And it's a it's a subset. So what is scroll wheel on this? How do I operate this? What kind of resistance do I feel in this? Right? We're talking about a frictionless world. This is a world with a lot of intertangled physics. With it, your hand imposes. Every time I drop this mouse, it will not fall in the same way.
Yes.
It will be orientation. If my hand slips and does that, there's a lot of lack of physics that has to be brought back into the model.
Sure.
For the latency and the way we actually process it, it's currently your bottleneck, and it's expensive, energy expensive for you to have a real-time operation happening through a server-linked decision making. It has that compute may have borrowed from mechanisms that are best suited for the physics and compute that we want to do, rather than borrowing the existing means of digital processing. While digital processing has got us to this great an extent of where we are today to achieve at scale and with reliability, it becomes a bottleneck henceforth to move further to a complex intelligence. And analog compute simplifies it to a great extent than the way the digital compute is. So yes, at the edge matters a lot more.
So that means we've established one thing. There is still a huge, almost a yawning gap when it comes to the data aspect or the data layer of things, Gokul. And I believe that you are tirelessly trying to fix that issue. So the ecosystem is not robust enough to give you that solution. No. But at least what Seema.ai is doing and Mr. Krishna is trying to achieve, that is something which will directly impact you. So that's a good thing then, as far as the ecosystem is concerned. Fair enough. I hope you haven't forgotten. We were going to have a conversation regarding Mr. Jensen Huang and Sam Altman, what they had to go ahead and talk about. This is, of course, very important for me to bring up, because when I was going through your entire story, I think it's been fascinating, Gokul, that you in a way have gone ahead and in a way challenged what they have been talking about, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it, because here's the point. Physical Intelligence raised $400 million for a foundation model approach to robot manipulation. Now, Jensen Huang's thesis, sir, scale AI and physical intuition follows. That's what Jensen believes. But you, I believe, till now, the way I've understood your very fascinating thesis is, and please make the case if you can kindly, Gokul, the foundation models trained on internet data will never produce physical intuition, as you were just talking about. And why scaling compute does not solve the manipulation problem at all.
I think some portions of the answer I covered earlier too.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
In fact, if you think about it, it's like no, we are underestimating the billions of years of evolution that has gone through, right? What rules are we actually putting into the system and what mechanisms? Semblance of tasks being completed versus in a narrow cases versus that being general purpose, because the aim here is general purpose. When we think about general purpose, then we need to first think about the physics of the object. Every time the intuition cannot just come accidentally through scale. Yes, scale can lead to the emergence. What's the cost of it? What's the timeline for it?
Sure.
And how much potentially you have to kind of invest into for you to do that, right? So that's where the scale is, right? So, and how generalizable it is. How much will you be able to borrow it from one end to the other end, right? Like I said, let me put it this way, right? If I'm showing both my hands in front of you, right? If I ask you, are they both touching or not touching? Think about how many billions of images that you would going to take about it.
Yeah.
How much data you're going to collect? Volume of data.
By the way, are they touching or not? Or are you playing a prank on me? Yeah, I knew it.
Right? Yeah. So this is just one sample in one dimension gives you all this information.
Oh, for sure.
That a billion samples, a billions of data in this particular dimension could be, right? This, the crux of it should hit the foundations of where.
I think you've
that
hit the
approach
nail
has
on the
been.
head with the answer then. That's completely clear in terms of you've debunked the entire thesis as far as Jensen Huang and Sam Altman are concerned. But then also it brings me to something fascinating. As far as what CynLr is doing, you are trying to achieve something which is called the universal shop floor or the universal factory, which I think is a wonderful thought. The fact that at the end of the day, you're hitting at the very root of the problem. You're saying it doesn't matter whether there is a particular model of a component or a particular phone, for example, is being produced or a car which is being produced. You don't need to go through infrastructural nightmares every time there is a shift in production, design, or for that matter, scaling up that design to mass production, etc. Please walk us through that, Gokul, because I mean, if you achieve that, my God, you've solved a huge world problem.
That is going to be that's basically, see, we don't believe in a vision, mission statement and kind of things. It has to be a science fiction that you do live through. Right? One of the science fiction that we have internally, there are a lot more similar to the farm integrated systems and personalized consumables and an imagination of mining, consumer mining, rather than your phone is dead, you don't go back to the earth to mine the raw material. You go to the dustbin to mine the raw material. Today, because effort is more costly, we don't do that.
Sure.
If we just automate the effort, then we would rather look to mine from the, because it's only an energy problem after that and so on and so forth. So, of which, the factory is the most relevant today for us to think about, because manufacturing is a very mature system to adopt this.
Yes.
Right? And then to think on these lines. So, the biggest issue for any customer is, let's say I've invested $1 billion into a line, right? A car line for the case. Now, if I don't produce 30,000 models, 30,000 cars every month, it's not profitable, and then I have to do that for the next 5 years. Right? I can't sustain it. So now it becomes a marketing and a sales network problem for you to sustain the interest of the consumer for the next 5 years, right? They're interested in this. This is what I was saying. Whatever the Duster created as a market, Nextel is reaping for the mid-segment SUVs and so on and so forth, right? So a decade long later. So imagine this is a problem because the person who follows you has the advantage of responding more quickly to the consumer's evolved taste. Sure. And in today's need, the consumer is evolving very, very fast.
Quick.
Forget about even using a different material altogether in the same line, like a phone and then car in the same place.
Sure.
A car itself will be multiple platforms in the same line to begin with first. But could we imagine that in the next 5 years period? Right? If I could actually do that, then I can scale. What stops me from, different sizes and different formats and different materials, different task processes? What stops me from repurposing that into a phone?
Yeah.
So it starts going into the velocity. So before the flywheel kicks in, the process is to think about a software-defined line, which means we need to remove. So I am not expecting a robot to be autonomous day one, go do all the tasks by itself.
Which will be great, but yeah,
which will be
I
great.
know what you mean.
That's a journey, right?
Sure.
That's a journey for it to get there. Like even if you put me today in a line, it will take at least a month for me to learn. Somebody will have to teach me, right? A task is already, right?
Correct.
My ability to go and pick is not taught. Today, the robotics, you have to move XYZ coordinate, program how much it has to move, what speed it has to move, which point it has to stop, all that. That's a human being will just do it by themselves.
Correct.
Right? Wherever the pen and the cap might be. So if you ask me to bring the pen back to the exact location, I can't. I'll have amounts of error.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wherever the cap may be, I'll be able to put it back in place.
Yes.
This is the capability that we want to bring into the robot. And if you have brought this, then you don't need a physical constraint. You can have a robot. The same hardware can be repurposed through a software.
Gokul, I'm sorry, but I have to ask you this. Will it be correct for me to understand that as more like an intuition that you're trying to kind of establish?
Yes.
Did I understand that correctly?
That's right. That's right. And then we split the intuition, that portion of the intuition that we spoke about, we split them into 3 aspects, right? So every task is a composition of the object that you want to handle and the tools that you will use for the object to be handled,
right,
and the actions that you perform on them. So to make it simplified, like, I want to pick the pen for what? Do I want to remove the cap? Or do I want to, put the pen in my pocket? Or do I want to clean the pen? These are all 3 different tasks that I perform on the same object.
Sure.
So first thing is build the object model, right? You create a bunch of action models. Like, for example, this is whether I did this on this, did I do that on a mouse or on a laptop? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? So I could borrow the same action across different objects. Right? So the amalgamation of these 2 becomes a recipe of a task.
Fair.
And if we are able to bring this framework, then and you have a hardware standardization that across different tasks, the same robot system is able to, or platform of robot system is able to scale across a very good marriage of my intelligence on top of my hardware, which could be repurposed continuously to various different tasks. Right? This is the foundation thesis that we're going into, and then we need a lot of customer partnerships. Today, it's too early to go and sell into the customer. Where I was saying the impatience of immediate solution. Rather, it's a journey with the customer for next 2 years or so.
Audi,
where a handholding.
This is the opportune time for you to tell us about Audi and as far as the 2-year period of which is going on, and the General Motors engagement as well. Please, Gokul. I mean, this would be the perfect
General Motors
time.
was a very early engagement, which we have to again reignite now. That happened 2 years back.
Okay.
We were too immature at the time, and then there were some things that we were able to do, and some things we were not able to. Whereas the problems like what we have in Audi and so which is basically a mirror that is picked and then assembled into a door.
Right.
So a mirror is a very complex part, right? You have a lot of different plastic materials. You have mirror as a glass, and then you also have a wire. You have a connector of a wire plus a door whose position is not fixed. And then you have a very, very narrow, tight space into which you may have to pass the wire through and then pull it from the other end. So this is a very, very complex end-to-end task in several layers the robot might actually fail. We just orchestrate this as an end-to-end task altogether. Okay? So which demonstrates its ability to handle variety of materials, first of all, and its presentation and orientations being completely different, right? The robot has a task of whichever the way you actually present the mirror, it has to figure out how to go pick it. Then it has to find out where the wire is and then straighten the wire because it might be bent and then it might be
very complicated.
And then you have to grasp the end of the wire's connector. Then look whether the connector is in the right orientation or not. Then find where the door is aligned. Adjust yourself to the door.
Wow.
And then set to the hole is very, very, it's a coin with, whereas the connector is almost as big as this. So you have to kind of pass them through the force because you can't see anymore because your hand is up. By cleaning it, you may have to pass that through. And then you have to pull the wire from the other end and then fit the mirror into it, right? So this is the kind of a task that you're doing. So this is not the, so why, what I want to draw attention to this is a technology demonstration. This is not still a deployable solution into the customer's life.
Fair point, right? But it's a very complicated perspective. Yeah.
It's a journey with the customer. So we have to go through several cycles or several stages per se, right? We start with functions. We go into a timing problem. So to solve this, it's not that you have solved it. It's not enough that you have solved it. You also have to solve it within the time period, which is like 40 seconds. So that comes with the second problem. So today we are doing it 2.5 minutes or so that we should kind of make it faster, right? So that's the next journey, right? That's the next step, because this is an unsolved problem. You solved an unsolved problem. And then now comes the next portion where you come into a timing, and which is a commercial process.
Mass production sort of a deal.
Mass production.
Yeah.
Right? Then comes the third stage where you have to bring reliability into the system.
Yes.
And where you have the process and safety integrations.
Correct.
This is the journey, and we need a hand-holding customer who understands these 5 stages of journeys and then moves along with, which we call as partner customers, essentially.
So Audi is one of those for you right
Audi
now?
is one of those that have been thus far.
What about the Indian customers? Any, Gokul, that you could probably shed light on? Because I believe that ecosystem will help in a big way.
Right. I think the Indian ecosystem, it depends on the customer, right? So the Indian ecosystem is yet to kind of respond to this. Indian ecosystem often doesn't lead these kind of frontier tech because there is no pressure of labor shortage. The labor price, the West especially faces a developed nation. Labor shortage, then also the consistency problem. These are the 2 reasons prominently that the automates than even the labor cost. That's just a benchmark for you. So that has already crossed. The cost of solution is cheaper now than the cost of the labor per se, and the unavailability of labor along with it has added to more and more of woes for these customers. And if the financial status of these organizations support them, they start acting. We are also now stepping into semiconductor, which seems to be a more
Wonderful.
For us.
With the recent semiconductor 2.0, 1.27 lakh crore rupees, which is released by the government, which I think is a great shot in the arm.
Absolutely. And globally, they are reimagining to adopt automation to a broader scale and to a larger scale. We are also looking at lab automation and aerospace as next ventures. We are sector agnostic from the point because we're just object manipulation, and you need to manipulate object across wide varieties of industry sectors today. But there are some customers who have a structure within to adopt robots in a way. While saying so, automotive as an industry has another problem because they have a legacy system.
Yes, they do.
You actually mentioned that they have a legacy process and they observe you from the legacy process point of view. You try to validate from there. So that's where the gap often we have with materializing with customers, because most customers start with processes that were meant for people. Like one example that I can illustrate with is okay, right?
Go ahead.
Not what they are actually benchmarking us with, but let's say, so that kind of a process, right? Those processes also have this okay. You don't need it for a robot system.
Yes,
but a human will make the mistake. A robot system will not make the mistake, right?
Correct.
We may have to rethink that whole process in a different way. The stations, cells, and actions are broken down for human inability and the ability, right? Very different. Robot ability and inability. That reimagination is a customer that we need in most cases. And everybody in the robotic segment do need that kind of a customer to look that from that purview. So yes, that's ugly.
But the fact that, these kind of conversations need to be had again and again and again and again, Gokul, because one, they're fascinatingly brilliant. They're extremely exciting. I don't even know how much time that you and I have spent, and I can still go on and on and on and on. And I hope
I think we have done very less, I suppose.
Yeah, I know. There's just so much more that you and I need to explore. We'll, of course, need a few mangoes to top up our calories.
We will ship you.
But honestly speaking, that's my very humble way of actually inviting you back on, Gokul, on Front Page for continuing this conversation, because it's so important. Absolutely. As far as the entire ecosystem is concerned. You're doing some wonderful work. The fact that when you're talking about reimagination, well, kudos to you, sir, because you're reimagining something which is going to probably, if it is achieved, and I'm praying that it is, it might just change manufacturing as we know it in the years to come. You're talking about a universal shop floor. So if that is achieved, my God, you have opened a new reality. And the one which will have repeatability, hopefully a human embrace of the robotic understanding of things. Fabulous.
And thank you so much. We need more of these tech coverages. I'm surprised with the depth that you could actually explore the topics and the awareness of the space that you actually had. And it is rare to come by often in the Indian media space. And it's a much, much needed thing. We do have a good readership. We do have a good followership for these kind of contents. And I much appreciate the fact that, this initiative has been taken by AIM and has been fronted by you. I love to see more and more of these conversations happening with more such founders who want to find their voice and place in the space.
Fabulous, Gokul. Thank you so much for that. But of course, that encourages us to carry on and bring you back on again and again, because there's so many milestones that you're going to be achieving as the time goes by. Well,
Value to be part of. So
thank you. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Please, I'd leave it at that. There is really nothing more that I could say. It was said wonderfully well by Gokul by the end of it. We need to have that awareness, and I believe we are almost on the precipice of doing something wonderful. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page by the IIM Network. Please do let us know what are your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM.
AI prototypes are everywhere, but very few professionals know how to deploy AI where businesses actually operate. Introducing the Certified Forward Deployed AI Specialist by Adasi, a certification designed for the new generation of AI professionals who can bridge technology, deployment, operations, and business execution in real-world enterprise environments. Because modern AI success is no longer just building models. It's about making AI work inside production systems, customer workflows, and enterprise operations. The future belongs to engineers who can take AI from demo to deployment. This certification is ideal for AI engineers, solutions architects, technical consultants, Gen AI practitioners, developers who want to move beyond experimentation and deploy AI systems that create measurable business impact. The future of AI belongs to professionals who can take intelligence from concept to real-world execution.
There are a lot of models available on Amazon. You can use any model. For this particular workshop, I'll go with Llama 3. It's the simplest, easiest, and in terms of cost, no problem. But yes, if you are an organization, you want to go and work, you can use Anthropic's Claude model. You can use any of these models. So this is the 2ML file. And what you need, all of you, is you can see there is a Docker file also created. There is a Pi project created. There is requirement, and this is the environment. So this is the app where you have a Pi cache. So this is your cache. Init.py will not have anything, that is for initialization. This is your actual agent script. And then here you have got a README, which you can use automatically running in Docker, and these things come automatically.
You can click on data store. You can click on the tool name. So this is tool 1. It's a data store. You can give the description. Now I'm going with the lowest score in terms of grounding. So we have low confidence that the response is grounded.
AI prototypes are everywhere, but very few professionals know how to deploy AI where businesses actually operate. Introducing the Certified Forward Deployed AI Specialist by Adasi, a certification designed for the new generation of AI professionals who can bridge technology, deployment, operations, and business execution in real-world enterprise environments. Because modern AI success is no longer just building models. It's about making AI work inside production systems, customer workflows, and enterprise operations. The future belongs to engineers who can take AI from demo to deployment. This certification is ideal for AI engineers, solutions architects, technical consultants, Gen AI practitioners, developers who want to move beyond experimentation and deploy AI systems that create measurable business impact. The future of AI belongs to professionals who can take intelligence from concept to real-world execution.
There are a lot of models available on Amazon. You can use any model. For this particular workshop, I'll go with Llama 3. It's the simplest, easiest, and in terms of cost, no problem. But yes, if you are an organization, you want to go and work, you can use Anthropic's Claude model. You can use any of these models. So this is the 2ML file. And what you need, all of you, is you can see there is a Docker file also created. There is a Pi project created. There is requirement, and this is the environment. So just this is the app where you have a Pi cache. So this is your cache. Init.py will not have anything, that is for initialization. This is your actual agent script. And then here you have got a README, which you can use automatically running in Docker, and these things come automatically.
You can click on data store. You can click on the tool name. So this is tool 1. It's a data store. You can give the description. Now I'm going with the lowest score in terms of grounding. So we have low confidence that the response is grounded.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. I'm Antara and you're watching Point Break. Just last week, India added its 130th unicorn. Emergent, an AI startup that launched and closed a $130 million Series C at a $1.5 billion valuation. More than 12 million applications have already been built on its platform. A unicorn in 1 year. That is a number that would have seemed impossible even 3 years ago for that matter. But Emergent is not alone. Sarvam AI, NESA, both founded in 2023, both unicorns, and both built from India for the world. India has never really had a founder shortage. In fact, a recent NFAP study found that Indian-born founders have created more US unicorns than any other immigrant nationality. At least 96 American unicorns traced to Indian origin entrepreneurs. India produced world-class talent. It just didn't always keep them. So the real question that we are asking today is that finally changing? Is 2026 the year India stops being the world's best exporter of founders and starts becoming the home of the companies that they build? That's the question that we are asking today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Antara. This is Point Break. Let's get right into it. I have three guests with me today, three guests who see the story from very, very different positions. Neha Singh, my first guest, is the co-founder and CEO of Traction, the data intelligence platform that tracks private markets globally and whose H1 2026 report is at the center of today's conversation. In fact, she has built Traction into a listed global B2B SaaS company from Bengaluru with nearly 70% of its revenue coming from the international markets. Neha, welcome to Point Break. My second guest today is Swati Avasthi, who is the founder of Women in Product India, a community of over 6,000 product builders. Of course, an AI PM coach, podcast host, and one of the most consistent voices tracking how artificial intelligence is reshaping careers, how it's reshaping products, and the technology ecosystem here in India. Swati, it's good to have you back here on Point Break with us. And third, last but not the least, is Shivam Rajvanshi, who is principal and AI investor at Together Fund, an early-stage venture fund backing AI, SaaS, and healthcare companies across India and the US. He is, in fact, one of the people actually making bets on which Indian AI companies become the next generation of global giants. Shivam, it's really good to have you on Point Break.
Thank you, Andra. Good to be here.
Thank you. All right, so let me put a central question to all the three of you immediately. You know, India's 130th unicorn, AI startups are reaching that milestone in 1 year. Now, $1 billion were raised in 6 months. Is this, would you call it a genuine turning point in India's technology story? Or would you say that, you know, we are in another funding cycle that would sort of look different in 18 months? Neha, if you want to start.
No, I think it's a very exciting time. Like India has produced, like I think this year there are about 6 unicorns. Half of them are pure, I would say, AI first companies. And it's great to see that, India is also having a good share of large companies in the AI race. So, if you look at the overall stat, India used to be around 8% of the overall funding that was happening till, like in 2021, 2022. But if you look at the whole AI race, at least till last year, India didn't have like a lot of late stage companies, right? And it's glad to see that, that change with all the three, large unicorns that have got created this year. So it's great to see that India is also having, sort of scaled companies, and it's not just around serving just the local domestic demand, I would say. So companies like Emergent have also captured, they also have a global customer base, right? So I think it's a good mix of companies that have scaled that are having both your domestic customer base as well as global customer base in the space.
Certainly, Neha. Swati, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I'll like to add the ecosystem point of view. Seeing these 3 to 6 unicorns closing funding and reaching a unicorn valuation in such a small time, it's definitely something that brings the belief of builders into like building from India, right? Versus that the issue that we see of builders, the export issue that we see, right? Our talent going to the US or the West to build. So seeing this unicorn status reached in such a small time reaffirms that belief of builders that they can build from India and reach that status themselves. So I'm super excited to see this happen.
Absolutely, Swati. Shivam, your 2 cents on this?
Yeah, I agree with all. I think every previous wave has been a stepping stone to where we are. Now with AI, it's such a tremendous opportunity. Cycles of how quickly you can scale revenues have compressed. Like in case of Emergent, it's an entirely new market which has opened up. And so because of that, capital is also flowing in. And the ceiling to how big a company can be from India, that ceiling is breaking with every such company. So it's a sign of the times we are in. It's a sign of the opportunity that's ahead of us. And Emergent is one of the early ones, but there'll be many more.
Certainly. That I believe is a fantastic approach right there, Shivam. All right, let's also get into the data part of it. Okay. Emergent, Sarvam, Nesad, these 3 companies all were founded, if I'm not wrong, it was founded in 2023. All unicorns by mid-2026. Now, the previous generation of Indian unicorns, namely Ola, Flipkart, Zomato, they took 5 to 10 years to get there. These companies got here in under 3. Neha, my first question here is to you. I believe Traction tracks this more rigorously than anyone, right? Why would you say are AI startups reaching unicorn status significantly faster than previous generation? Would you say is it the underlying business different, or would you say it's the valuation methodology that is different?
So that's correct to say that the time to reach a unicorn since founding, that has got compressed with this set of unicorn companies, right? Like the average used to be around 8 to 10 years. Here, it is about 2 to 3 years. And, companies are becoming scaling and also having revenues at a massive scale, right? In a very short span of time. And this is not just in India, this is also happening globally. Like even if you contrast the AI first companies who have become unicorn and then the other ones, they are typically becoming unicorns at 5x faster pace, right? So that's a very compressed timeline. Obviously, there are a few reasons for, having that. So one is that there are 2 broad, I would say, buckets. So one is a lot of these companies require very heavy infrastructure investments, right? Like NESA being one of them, or even if you look at the large ones in US, a lot of their capital inflow is going into infrastructure investments. So that's a different type of investments, I would say, right? And that is why the capital requirement for these companies is also a little more than your traditional companies, which were there in the tech space. Right. So that is one, right? Like NESA, if you look at it, their 600 million equity has been raised, and, they also have raised a 600 million equity for debt, which is planned for an infrastructure financing, right? So that is, that's one of the reasons. The other thing is also this, this massive adoption cycle, thanks to the platform, which has been happening both at the government level and as well as the enterprise level and at the consumer level, right? So this type of adoption, this type of curve was not even seen in the mobile space, right, in the era, right? So obviously the consumers are adopting this faster. The second part, even the enterprises, which were typically, fairly late in terms of adopting, there's a top-down mandate that you have to have, sort of AI investments and AI usage across the company, right? So a lot of the CEOs, you will hear that they are tracking, how many tokens got used until obviously the bill shows up later on. But that was even in the quarterly calls. A lot of the CEOs would also talk about, how this is being used across the enterprises. Across all the workforce, right? So that's the second bucket, which I would say the enterprises. Okay. The third, which surprisingly are also early adopters, are also government, right? So in the case of, for instance, Sarvam, right? The government has also been an early adopter of this technology, which has contributed to, the scaling of these companies, right? So I think it is just a very exciting time that, both on the consumer, enterprise, as well as, government side, there is a very high intent to adopt. And that is why, thanks to this, some of these companies have been able to scale at a massive pace.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Neha. Shivam, my next question here is to you. You invested in Emergent. What did you see in that company specifically, that convinced that this was a genuine breakthrough and it wasn't just an AI wave beneficiary?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we invested in Emergent back in 24. And 24 was the time when models had already started writing better and better code. And the bet that we had taken back then was, as the code writing capabilities improve, eventually suite of models or the suite of agents will be able to automate the entire software creation process. And so there was the tailwind that we were investing on. And that's precisely what Emergent has proven. Emergent can create end-to-end applications, websites, from you thinking about the idea to writing the code, to testing it, to debugging it, to deploying it. And while it's a tremendous software capability, what that unlocks is any and every technical, non-technical user in the world now has access to that. And so that's the tailwind which has helped Emergent really, really scale and get to tens of millions of users and hundreds of millions of revenue, because it just democratized the access to software creation. What historically used to be only limited by access to developer and access to resources are now getting democratized by the likes of Emergent. And that is why I think these kind of businesses have been able to scale really fast, because this entire new crop of user adoption, as Neha was saying, has really come to the forefront, and these kind of new budgets that are opening up because AI can prove the value very fast. So that's what led us to invest in Emergent 2 years back. And since they launched their product last year, of course, they've scaled very nicely from there on.
Certainly, Shivam. Which, brings me to my other question here as well. And Neha, again, this question is for you. Would you say that investors are actually funding genuine technological breakthroughs, or would you say they are simply rewarding exposure to the AI wave? Because, right, again, those two are very different things, and the data should tell us which one it is. So what is your take on it?
So I would say it's both. Okay. It's obviously the company being at the right point in time, given the AI wave, right? If someone was, for instance, helping like SMEs, or smaller enterprises come online in the pre-AI era, right? Versus now, obviously. So, thanks to companies like Emergent, that has changed, right? So someone who's a non-native coder also can do and put a website up very quickly, right? So obviously there's a thing about being at the right point in time in the AI wave, right? That is there. The second thing is also the genuine breakthroughs and difficult problems that these companies are solving, right? Be it simple as setting up the whole infrastructure layer of GPUs, which is required by everyone, right? Anyone who's consuming using this AI models, right? So, just that, and, you've seen a lot of examples that itself is not a trivial problem. So you have to solve a lot of difficult problems to be able to do it in a timed manner, right? So I think it's a mix of both, and obviously there is competition within the each segment as well, right? So it's not just this company, like in the case of, for instance, Sarvam, it's not just Sarvam doing it. There are 2 or 3 other companies also doing it, and still you have to be better than the other, right? Yeah. So that's the other part. So I think it's a mix of both, right? Being at the right time as well as they are actually genuinely, doing innovation.
Understood, Neha. Thank you for that. Thank you for answering that. Swati, from the product and community side, Women in Product India has, I believe, 6,000 plus builders, right? Now, which Indian AI startup do you think would have the strongest chance of really becoming the next major global AI company? And what are you basing that on?
Yeah. I don't have a clear-cut answer or a winner in terms of just one company. I think it has to be across what enables the AI operating system for the whole ecosystem, whether in India or abroad, right? So infrastructure and compute, we're definitely seeing, right? So that's where NASA is winning. So definitely across the compute infrastructure, and also from a India standpoint, how we win in terms of the vertical AI across segments like manufacturing, healthcare, and are we able to translate that for the global ecosystem as well? Because the context of these industries are very different for different countries, right? So if we win with that within India, for what like we're seeing China, right? China has been investing in their infrastructure for enabling their industries in the manufacturing and robotic space. Similarly, is India able to build that for their specific context and then translate it for the globe is where I see us winning. And then like all of these players like Sarvam, NASA, Emergent become essential to the operating layer of how the industry-wide enablement is happening with AI.
All right. Thank you for that, Swati. Let's also talk about where the capital is actually going. Because one of the most surprising trends in H1 2026 is that capital is no longer flowing primarily towards the consumer apps, right? AI infrastructure, data center infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, and energy, they're all now amongst the most funded categories, right? NASA, for example, raised $600 million for AI infrastructure. Sarvam raised $234 million for sovereign models. Investors appear to be backing these foundations rather than applications. Neha, my question is to you here. What investment thesis is currently winning in AI? And is that thesis different from what was winning 18 months ago? Would you say that, investors are backing models, infrastructures, applications, agents, vertical AI, or would you say that it is shifting in real time? Neha.
Yeah. No, thanks. That's a great question. And I think there's a change which has happened, I would say, in the last 1 year or 1.5 years. Earlier, 1.5 years, we were talking about the fact that it'll be very difficult to have infrastructure companies out of India because it requires just an enormous amount of capital. Right. And we were talking about the fact that how the US-based large LLM companies are subsidizing the application layer for a lot of the companies over here. And then it's easier to sort of build applications. Right. So that was the talk about, 1.5 years back. That obviously changed across all these years. A lot of things had come up. So one is the whole talk about sovereign AI. Right. Earlier, people, didn't used to think about it that seriously. But given the fact that how, the latest model of Anthropic was launched by the US, banned by the US government for exports. And there were so many other things, that it being used in military operations, etc. So, that renewed the interest in having the whole sovereign stack, for every country, I would say, right? So I think that has happened. And right now, I think there's a mix. So investors, there are also infrastructure companies, thanks to that, that is getting funded over here. And there are also platform companies that are able to scale from here, right? Like Emergent would probably be like a platform company. The third is like your applications, and people were very, like investors were very cautious about the fact of the application companies, because what happens is, like there is some companies into cybersecurity, and then you see Anthropic launching, a module for that, or Anthropic launching a module for that particular industry. And then you'll see in the public markets, all the stocks of the companies which are in that space, tanking and getting impacted, right? So in the application layer, investors are very cognizant about the fact that, you're not doing something which the large LLM models, or, a ChatGPT or a Claude would actually launch, in the next 12 months, right? So I think people have gone through the whole cycle And I would say a year back, people were conscious about, how do you differentiate between these companies with just very light wrappers around the LLMs versus the companies that are actually doing, deeper innovation, right? I think, investors have gone through the whole cycles, and right now, it's great to see all these companies coming up and also, raise the late stage funding.
Neha, just a small follow-up question on this. Would you say this is a genuine conviction about where value gets built? Because, or would you say, is it simply that the application layer is getting too crowded? I want to understand from you, why is this shift happening in the first place?
Right. So the fundamental, the fundamental fact is that, when you go lower down, like when you go to the infrastructure layer, the amount of capital that is required is a lot, right? So obviously, like US and China, if you look at it, they probably have the bulk of these companies in this space. And, there are lesser probably in other regions because, a lot of them require like huge amount of capital, right? Applications, I would say, they're given the pace at which, a ChatGPT or an Anthropic have been launching some of these modules and have been making, forays in different industries, I would say, right? That has obviously made people very cognizant about the fact that, what applications will actually be eaten away by the generic stack. By these generic LLMs. So I would say, but people have gone through that whole cycle, right now, even founders have seen probably, that closely. Their companies, some of their companies were on the wronger side, with the launches that have happened. But I think right now there's more conviction, I would say, for investors to actually be able to segregate these companies and take larger bets in some of these.
Okay, Neha, understood. Thank you for the clarity, Neha. Shivam, from, a specific infrastructure question here. Together invest at the early stage. Now, if you were deploying, say, $100 million today across the Indian AI stack, where does it go? And what is the most overlooked AI opportunity in India right now as we speak?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Indra. I think we've always invested with the same belief and philosophy that in the AI wave, value creation will happen across the stack. So if I have to club our portfolio into each layers of the stack, we've invested at the silicon layer, which is the compute layer at the very foundation. We have companies which are trying to do chip design and trying to tape out their own semiconductor chips. Then we have invested at the foundational model layer. And the foundational model layer, the prize is not always getting to the next frontier large language model, but new kinds of architectures which will be better at certain tasks, smaller models that could be deployed at enterprise. So we've done a bunch of investments at the foundation layer. Infrastructure also has been a big part of where India has tried to create waves in the AI era. We have emergent as an infrastructure company because the core breakthrough was not emergent was more about how they could bring along this multi-agentic architecture, and that's why they became so good, because they topped the leaderboards globally. How can they orchestrate all these different agents to automate the entire life cycle? Similarly, we have another company called Composio, which is used by more than 1.5 million developers globally, which helps systems and agents talk to each other. And then even on the application side, while there's a lot of fear of what larger models would do, but we've found success in solving very specific problems and taking it to a lot of, to a fair degree of depth. And so we have new age CRMs coming up. We have a bunch of companies that are trying to automate vertical industries like healthcare, like supply chain, like legal, etc. And so if I have to invest $100, I think I'd probably go all across the stack. Okay. Of course, some layers of the stack are more capital intensive, like you have to build your own chip or you have to train a larger model. You need more compute, you need more resources, you need more talent. But having said that, we are looking at value creation all across the stack. And so that's where we have deployed almost $150 million over the last 3 years all across the stack.
All right.
In terms of what all sectors are overlooked, I think the pace of change and the way new opportunities are presenting is so fast that I'd say new sectors and opportunities are coming up maybe every month or every quarter. And so rather than saying what is overlooked, I'm more excited to talk about what are the new spaces that have come up over the last couple of months. And one of them is physical AI, of how large language models transfer from just generating text or images, etc., to interacting with the real world. One of those spaces is also governance and liability for AI, because as as your AI agent and my AI agent interacts with each other, a lot can go wrong. And so how do you bring liability for those AI agents, and how do you cover enterprises from a compliance perspective? And another part of that wave is, as Neha was saying, given the recent events of what happened with Mythos for Anthropic, or the recent performance that GLM in China has been able to show, enterprises are also realizing that they can't rely just on a handful of frontier labs. And so building reliance on the entire supply chain is also a new opportunity wave that is coming up. So those are the areas that we are excited about to invest.
Absolutely, Shivam. Absolutely. Swati, what is the most crowded category from where you sit? What is the most crowded AI category in India right now, where most companies probably won't survive? And what is genuinely undeserved here?
Yeah, I think that's a valid question, because a lot of people have been experimenting, building with AI, right? Yeah. But the core thesis of building a great product remains the same. Is it solving a user problem, and in a unique way that's not been done before? So I think generic wrappers, as Neha and Shivam both mentioned, have become a little overcrowded, but do you have like a differentiated revenue model probably that will make you last? For example, like there are a host of note takers out in the market right now, but something that will stick, right? So there is still value in creating a wrapper, but then how are you differentiating with all of the other generic ones out there? Are you going deeper into a specific industry, as Shivam also mentioned, and solving for a very specific problem? Or if you're going broader, then what is the differentiation in terms of model? Is it revenue? Is it your UX? Is it your PLG motion? Is it your GTM? I think Emergent won on the GTM side pretty quickly, because the amount of content that they were putting out from the very start, and AI made that easier also to generate and put that content out there, right? So that made them shine probably earlier than some of the similar tools that are out there. And then obviously they were able to raise capital and then scale faster. So that differentiation and understanding your market the best will take you further. And Andhra, what was the second part? I'm missing that.
All right. So my second part was, since, the AI category in India, it's getting more and more crowded. Would you say that most of these companies won't really survive given the sheer number?
I think that is true to an extent.
Okay.
But also the resilience of a founder and a startup is them pivoting. So if a true builder has started on a path, they are building something generic at this point, but are they learning and evolving with the ecosystem and the market? It also kind of that belief and that resilience will kind of will answer that question eventually.
Sure, and hoping that it could sort of step away from the part, given the fact that it's so saturated right now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like we as product people and builders, we have to keep learning and evolving. Probably something that's not working in my favor at this point in the market and industry. I learn from that, and then I build something better and more novel than an emergent, right? So it's all about like learning and being resilient.
Absolutely. Fair, Swati. Thank you for that. I also want to sort of steer the conversation here a little bit and talk about brain drain here. India has produced extraordinary founders, right? But for, decades, I believe, many of India's most ambitious entrepreneurs, they moved to Silicon Valley, raised capital in the US, and built companies for international markets. The talent was Indian. The company, however, was American. Now, at least 96 US unicorns traced to Indian origin founders. India has 130 of its own. China built hundreds domestically. Now, the difference may not be talent, however, it might be the ecosystem here. Neha, why do you think have so many Indian founders historically built their largest companies outside of India? You built Traction from Bengaluru, you listed it here, generated nearly 70% of revenue internationally. So you made a different choice. what do you think was missing in the ecosystem that pushed people away? And would you say that it's actually fixed now, or would you say we're on the path of getting it fixed?
No, that's a great question, Antara. And in fact, not a lot of people know that Traction actually got started in Stanford earlier, and then obviously now our entire team of about 700 is actually based out of India. So we are completely Indian, I would say in that sense. But obviously that is there. Like even if you look at some of the large companies in India, a lot of them are actually run by Indian origin founders, or I would say in the founders which have got educated in India and then have moved to US, right? And they're broadly, like if you, a lot of people don't know, like the Anthropic's CTO was actually, he got his education in PS University in Bangalore, right? So very close here. So, and, like obviously it's great to see, people, of Indian origin, people who have like done their education here and are doing great over there, not just at founders, but at CXO roles. I would say broadly two reasons for that. So one is just the whole ecosystem. Right, like for someone is, for instance, doing anything in semiconductor, I would say, right? It's very difficult to find that ecosystem here, right? That is changing for a few sectors. So, for instance, space tech, right? So, people would not have thought 5 years back that a startup can actually launch a rocket, but thanks to the ecosystem, which was accelerated by ISRO, startups have been able to do that much more faster than otherwise if they have to learn the whole thing, right? So, one or two large companies just accelerates that, right? So that is one is about the ecosystem. So obviously India, for a lot of the deep tech sectors, didn't have that ecosystem. That is changing slowly, right? By one company at a time, I would say. One company creates this whole network of other founders and companies through it, right? The second thing is availability of capital. Obviously, if you see globally, like 40% of the capital still is getting invested in US. It's available. There's a lot of capital which is available. That really provides the risk capital for a lot of the companies, for a lot of the founders to take the plunge, scale the companies. Not all the companies succeed, but that just provides this amazing risk capital which is there, right? That is also changing in India, I would say, in the last decade. Right. Okay. So there are companies which have raised large amount of capital. They are able to sort of take the risk across different sectors. So I would say that's one of the main two reasons, I would say, why US has seen a lot of startups, I would say, with a similar sort of talent, sort of brain drain, which is happening. And I would say India is actually on a great path. Okay. I think that is changing very soon. So just to give an example, like this whole SaaS, right? Like one company, like Zoho, for instance, in Chennai, that created this whole SaaS ecosystem, that had so many other companies afterwards, right? And, that is similarly happening in a lot of the other sectors as well. And as capital is also getting available to a lot of the Indian companies, that is also changing.
Right. Thank you, Neha. Thank you for that clarity. And that answer from, someone who stayed and built is really important. So thank you for that. Shiva, my next question is to you. Many VCs, they still encourage Indian founders to establish a US presence early. Does Together do that? And what would have to change for the next OpenAI to be built from a Bengaluru rather than San Francisco?
Yeah, I believe it's already started. Incorporation, I think, is a function of a bunch of things. Okay. Some of them, as Neha also mentioned, we take it case by case basis. In a lot of cases, if your end market, all your customers are, let's say, in US, then it makes sense for the company to be incorporated there, because you have to be close to your customer. You have to be living and talking the same language and breathing the same air as a customer, and that really changes the feedback cycles and the iteration loops, especially in the early days. In those cases, we encourage the companies to be, at least the founders, to be spending a lot of time in the US. Whereas in different cases where the market is closer home and there's a lot of existing talent pool and know-how that already exists in India, in cases of a lot of vertical markets, like, for example, healthcare or legal or finance, then we've also have portfolio companies who are registered here in India. So it depends more on case-to-case basis, maybe more for infrastructure companies, for model companies where the larger market has to be in the US. We encourage the founders to be based in the Bay Area so that they can hire the talent there, they can be closer to your customers. But we also have companies who are registered in India.
Okay.
I think with the recent public markets, I think the Indian IPO path is becoming more and more prominent, thanks to people like Neha who've taken companies public. So I think now founders are realizing that at least to go public in US, the ceiling of or the revenue baselines have become very high. And so founders are also exploring alternate paths to set them up for an eventual listing in India.
Right. Thank you, Shivam, for answering that. Swati, what do you have to say? Do you think reverse brain drain is actually becoming real? From the product and career community that you have built, are you seeing people who, would have previously moved abroad, choosing to stay and build in India? What is driving that, if yes? And what is still pushing people away, if no?
Yeah. No, it's real. The reverse brain drain. I think me and Neha both came back from the US. We're building here. And within the community, within my network in the US and UK, I'm seeing so many people move back. And that's happening. And there is a lot of, obviously, I think faith they need to have that that the ecosystem here will enable them to build something that will last versus them doing it in the West, right? So that belief has to be there first. And how we as a country are preparing to bring our talent back or keep our talent here is something essential that the government and the country has to enable, and the academia as well has to enable well. And also secondly, some of like the macroeconomic issues when you see happening in the West, how the administration in the US is, how welcoming they are for the Indian talent, whether it's like builders or its founders, is also kind of aiding that, right? That people are feeling with like India's capability going up and with the situations changing in the West, this is the best time that builders who are in the US or in other Western countries are looking to move back. They know, like they understand the context, they understand what are the areas that they can help the country grow in with the learning they've had in the West. If they have that belief, they will move back, right? So like government and we as economy have to sort of enable that and keep that going.
All right. Swati, to sort of, build on that, on whatever you've just said, and this again is a question to all the three of you here. Does India actually have enough talent, enough capital, compute, and market demand to, retain its best AI founders right now? Or would you say there is still something missing that makes leaving feel like a smarter bet for someone who wants to build at the frontier?
I would say there is already case studies that can attest for that. If you see like Open and Anthropic, they are very aggressively building their teams in India already, right? Because they see India as the second largest market. So if that is not attestation enough for founders that they should be building for India and like someone who's local and native to India, building and winning in those markets, I think that should be attestation enough for our founders to see that there is a real demand, there is adoption, and there is also capital that is available to do so. It's about like looking at the global scenario and also like India's specific context closely and then building for it.
Right. Neha, anything that you want to add?
No, I would totally agree to what Swati is saying, that India, has shown that it has the it has the talent, it has the capital, it has a lot of demand for a lot of the companies. It is, probably the second largest geography, in terms of the demand as well. So, I think it's probably, at a great place, I would say.
All right. Shivam, anything that you want to add?
Yeah, we've always had the talent. I think with the recent successes, we've proven that we have the ambition. And with everything that's now, there's capital also flowing in, and this will create a flywheel of more and more founders taking inspiration from their peers and starting up, and we'll witness this next generation of iconic AI companies to come out of India.
All right. Cheers to that. I mean, here's to hoping, of course. Thank you for that. Again, steering the ship here a little bit. Recent events have exposed how dependent many countries remain on foreign AI systems, right? Now, in June, access to some advanced frontier models became restricted outside the United States overnight. India is investing heavily in the India AI mission, Bharat Jet, Sarvam, and domestic compute infrastructure. But most enterprise AI spending in India still flows to OpenAI or Anthropic and Google. Neha, question is to you here. Would you say that sovereignty is becoming the defining AI investment thesis? And does the data actually validate that? Would you say that investors are, putting real money behind sovereign AI, or would you say that it's more aspiration than allocation right now?
So I would say that this is one of the big themes. Sovereign AI, which has become for India and for some of the larger geographies as well, thanks to some of the instances which have also happened recently.
Yeah.
And, countries are also realizing that this is going to be like a strategic, part of just like you have the other infrastructure, just like you have, whatever, your roads, etc., your internet. This is also like a critical infrastructure part, which is going to be there which is going to impact a lot of your industries, right? And as well as defense, right? So I think that has definitely become, one big pillar for investments. And you will see government has also allocated money for that, and which is also flowing through the funds, which is also flowing through the companies. You can also see that in the companies because, like government is a customer for some of these companies. So you're also seeing that in action, right? Flowing in terms of the revenue. And that will continue to be one large theme, which will be there from investment point for investors as well, because you will see the demand, and the need for that, to be one of the key things that will go across.
All right. Thank you for that, Neha. I would also like to ask this. If AI becomes, critical national infrastructure, like say energy or telecom, should governments treat it that way? And does that sort of change what you back as an investor? This, of course, is a question to Shiva.
Yeah, I think AI is going to be a critical infrastructure. And thankfully, the government has also started to realize it early on. And it should continue to be this way. And again, we have to break the stack of AI and understand where are we lacking today and where are we good. I think compute, etc., there's a lot of reliance on the NVIDIAs of the world and maybe a handful of other chip companies. And India is still a while away from creating that and bringing economies of scale there. And but on the other side, I think intelligence or models is something that, thanks to some of the open source work that's happening across the globe, we can start utilizing that even today. We don't have to wait for one company to build the next frontier model. So I think government also the ecosystem has to realize where are we lacking and where is the opportunity. Thankfully, over the last couple of months, we've started meeting a lot of people who are trying to build new kinds of chips, who are trying to build new kinds of models which work for Indian needs, which work at Indian prices. And all of that will lead to reliance on our local supply chain than depending globally. But in the short term, I do think that we'll continue to leverage the platform that the hyperscalers provide us, the platform that the larger chip companies provide us, and the platform that the frontier model labs provide us. So we'll continue to leverage that, and which will be crucial in how we become an AI-first economy.
Okay. All right, Shiva. Thank you so much for answering that.
Something to add.
Yeah, please.
There's something I heard is that the government is going to be restricting Indian companies to be sending their data to US data centers. I don't know if you guys have heard, but attest to the fact that government is recognizing AI as a critical infrastructure and building towards that.
Absolutely, Swati. In fact, Swati, from the product builders and founders in your community, does the sovereignty question actually change how they build, or does it feel like a government conversation that doesn't really affect what they ship tomorrow morning?
I think the majority of building I'm still seeing within the community that is very US focused. That isn't a sovereignty conversation, but we do have companies like Socket AI who are building for India and a frontier model for India. So they are really close friends. So we see like their progress, and they're part of the India AI mission as well. I think they're part of the AIM ecosystem as well. So we're seeing both sides of the coin, but largely the grassroots product and builder ecosystem is still building for US, mostly a US enterprise customer. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarity, Swati. Before, again, I steer the conversation here a little bit, there is one question that I would like to ask to all the three of you. What does artificial intelligence independence actually look like for India in practice? Because sovereignty is a spectrum. You can be sovereign at the data level, the model level, the compute level, or the application level. So where does India, need to own the stack, and where can it rely on others?
So maybe
Neha, if you want to start?
Take
Yes,
this up.
please.
Yeah. So essentially, I think the whole, AI independence essentially translates sort of reliance across, I would say, different stacks, right? It can mean, obviously, chips. There is a very high dependence which is there on international companies, but the entire stack, like the infrastructure, your models, etc. And due to the recent events, we've also realized the fact that it's at times not just the companies' willingness to work with the government in India or India companies. Like in the case of Anthropic, it was not Anthropic's willingness, but it was more imposed by the US government. Right. And there was a similar case of Meta acquiring a company in Singapore, which the China government had, actually vetoed. So they could not, complete the acquisition. So in these cases, you're also seeing sort of other nations step in and, impose something on the company, so that it's not just on the company's willingness to work with, companies in other regions. So I think the renewed interest in actually having independence across the stack, and over time, there is sort of focused effort in building skills wherever that is needed, across the whole stack of AI.
Certainly, Neha. Shivam, do you want to add on to that?
I agree. I think we need to take it stack, like each layer of the stack, and we need to push on each of those fronts, whether it's compute or it's the modeling side. And I think the reason one of the reasons why China has done well there is they have built the domestic market, which is a closed market, but they still built it in a way that it also caters to a lot of demand, which puts an economic flywheel of incentivizing people to build in India and sell in India. And like, for example, banks in India could be captive customer bases because there's a lot of data which needs to be within our the walls of the country for compliance needs and this and that. So as the demand also catches up, I think it will become economically viable for businesses to rely on this. It should not be just because of sovereignty, because it will be tough for India to be cost economic or high performance on every field at the get-go. And so for a lot of cases, we will need to rely on the Western counterparts. But if it makes sense business-wise, and that creates a flywheel in, be it for our local data, be it for our intelligence, for our compute, for everything else, right? For our talent. I think we should work on all of those.
Again, Shivam, I'm going to build on that. In fact, Google DeepMind's Manish Gupta recently argued, that India's biggest bottleneck is no longer talent, it is ambition. He, in fact, pointed out that Indian companies spent roughly, I believe, 0.35% of the revenue on R&D, and compared to more than 3% in the US and China. And China has produced hundreds of unicorns domestically, like you were pointing out, while India has produced world-class founders who often build their companies elsewhere. Now, Shivam, would you agree with that? Do you agree that India's challenges ambition rather than talent? And is increasing venture funding enough? Or would you say that India would need a fundamental shift in how companies really think about their long-term R&D?
Yes and no. I think I agree with the ambition bit. I agree with the talent bit, but I think it's also changing, because ambition is a function of risk appetite and exposure. And Indians have historically have had lesser risk appetite in my view than some of the other geographies, right? But it's also a function of how we have progressed as a country. Of course, now we have exposure. Information arbitrage is almost next to nothing, and so we have the right kind of exposure. Back in the day, if something is happening in the valley, it used to take months for it to reflect in India, right? But now it's almost simultaneous. So we have the right exposure thanks to the early wave of companies and thanks to the decade or 2 decades of entrepreneurial activity in the past. I think now we have the right kind of risk appetite. We are meeting very young founders who are dropping out of colleges and starting their companies, and so I think both of those things have started to reflect on the ground. And so I think ambition is going to also get solved.
And I think also from ecosystem maturity standpoint, there are more mentors that they can look up to and more positive role models as well. So that's also accelerating that ambition pace, that like ambition translating into action.
Absolutely, Swati. Neha, what lessons can India really take from China's ability to, sort of build domestically?
So I think a couple of the things that have worked really well for China, which our ecosystem can also sort of learn, is one is they've had like a few companies which have scaled. Like in US, that's a Magnificent Seven, right? They are able to generate a lot of free cash flow to actually pump in a lot of money into doing R&D, which will probably produce results after a few years, right? So even if you see the recent the investment that has been made, Google, for instance, they talk about investment of more than $100 billion in just the infrastructure layer, which they are going to be making for doing the whole AI, riding the whole AI wave. Right. In India, you don't have these kind of large companies with that much amount of free cash flow, especially in the tech space, that can actually invest like billions of dollars in R&D, obviously. And, China had the fortune of having the bad companies, right? The Alibaba and the larger companies, which were able to then put in a lot of R&D capital, which is required, right? So I think that is perhaps, that will be sort of good to have in India, like, a few companies which will come outside so that they are able to generate a lot of free cash flow, which can then go into projects of R&D, which will probably give results of revenue after a few years, right? I think, that is one thing that is probably different. And obviously the second part is the whole talent, which I think India is doing an amazing job at, I think the ecosystem is evolving at a great pace. So that is getting built across different sectors at a very good pace.
Absolutely, Neha. Shivam, one question to you here as well. Would you say that, should the next generation of Indian founders measure success not by building the next Silicon Valley company, but by building globally competitive AI companies from India? And would you say that is a different kind of ambition that venture capital actually rewards?
So you're saying being competitive globally versus creating the next best in class from India?
Yes.
I think venture capital rewards being competitive globally. I think we have to steer away from local maximas and always benchmark from global maximas. Of course, we have to do that with full cognizance of the ecosystem maturity that we are dealing with. But I think we have to steer towards a global maxima, and that's how we progress.
Yeah, I mean, if you come to think of it, it's not just one factor that, led to the brain drain. And it's certainly not going to be one factor that leads them back. So, of course, you're very right when you say that it's not, it's not just the infrastructure or just one part of the ecosystem that one needs to focus on. It's a plethora of, parameters out there that, we really need to look at. Thank you for that, Shivam. And again, in the interest of time, I'm going to sort of start wrapping up the segment here. But before that, I have one final question, and it's the same for all the three of you. When we look back 10 years from now, would you say that 2026 would be remembered as the year that India finally started building its own AI giants at home? Or would it be the year that we missed yet another opportunity and watched the next generation of unicorns get built somewhere else?
I would say 2026 would be,
Go ahead.
2026 would be a great year that probably shown that you can have sort of scaled companies in the AI space from India. I think that is something that has probably happened for the first time this year, versus the previous years.
Certainly. Swati?
I am for the motion as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, this is the start of a very exciting wave.
Absolutely.
And we'll see many more of these.
Fantastic. That's a great note to end this conversation on, Neha, Swati, and Shivam. Thank you for that. India has never had a founder shortage. That has always been true. What has changed, or what may be changing, is whether the ecosystem here is finally compelling enough to sort of keep those founders and their companies and their values that they create. Emergence, Sarvam, NESA, they are early data points, but not a conclusion. So the conclusion gets written over the next decade. So thank you, Neha, Swati, and Shivam. This has been a great conversation. It's been a fantastic conversation. So thank you so much for your time. And to whoever has tuned in right now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this episode of Point Break. I'm Antra, and we'll see you again next time.